This week on Offscreen, we're reading Hidden by Matt and Ross Duffer. A family takes refuge in a fallout shelter to avoid a dangerous outbreak.
Okay,
So,
tell me about the Duffer brothers.
the Duffer brothers, as they're professionally credited, are now quite famous and in the public consciousness.
I don't know that I had heard of them, to be honest.
Oh, well,
Although I'd certainly
you'd
heard
heard
of-
of Stranger Things.
Yeah,
Which is their Netflix show, which has gotten really popular, kind of out of nowhere,
yeah,
and playing with like this wave of '80s nostalgia,
yeah.
quite successfully.
I actually
I thought.
watched. I just watched the first episode of
Uh-huh.
Stranger Things last night. Seems okay. I don't know. I wasn't like it didn't make a strong impression on
Sure.
me. I'm gonna continue to watch it, but
I think it's definitely worth the watch.
have you been watching?
I've seen it, yeah.
It seems a little generic so far, but I'm willing to give it some time.
It's not amazing, but it's definitely worth the watch.
I like the
guess.
music.
Yeah, the
That
music's really good.
synthy '80s
Uh-huh.
sci-fi kind of sounding music.
So this one, prior to breaking out with Stranger Things, they were writers on Wayward Pines, the TV show.
Okay.
And actually, I think they've said that like 15 or 20 networks passed on Stranger Things
Phew.
before Netflix finally gave them the go-ahead,
Dang.
which is kind of damning of the other ones, of the other networks, but also
Yeah.
an inspirational story in terms
Yeah.
of their...
You know, I heard a similar thing about Annapurna, the
Uh-huh.
studio.
Megan Ellison's company.
Right. I guess I was just before we started recording, I was telling Steve and I went to a screening of Sausage Party, and they did a Q&A with the writers, and they said the same thing. They said that they went out with the script for Sausage Party, and nobody wanted it for like a really long time, and then finally Annapurna picked it up. So also a similarly inspirational story.
Megan Ellison's got that FU Oracle money. She doesn't care.
I think Netflix is starting to become that kind of a figure too, where they will just
Right.
they'll go out on a limb for people and do stuff. That
Their streaming movie collection is just god awful now. And all they really have is their own original
originals.
content. So they're trying to build that library up as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like, have you tried to find something on streaming recently?
Well, they have good stuff. It's just I've seen all of the good stuff already. I mean, I'm
There's
already through it
There's
all.
like 11 movies there.
And it cycles sometimes. They'll lose stuff
Yeah.
and they'll gain new stuff. But
Um,
let's not throw shade at Netflix.
Well, no, they did well in bringing Stranger Things to life and letting the Duffers make it as they saw fit.
Yeah.
But this was actually their directorial debut as far as features go.
Oh, okay.
And it was made in like 2012, and it got a tiny release in 2015.
Oh.
Um,
I certainly don't remember any like big trailers for this or anything.
no, I don't think hardly anyone saw it. It stars Alexander Skarsgård though.
Okay.
But yeah, this is a thriller horror type of thing.
Yeah.
Zombie like.
Similar in a lot of ways to the Cloverfield sequel we read.
Yeah, definitely. That's a
Super
very good reference
contained.
point.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the synopsis?
Yeah, sure. Okay. It's been almost a year since the Hewitts were forced to flee their home and take refuge in a bomb shelter underground. Their entire town was nuked in an effort to contain a sudden viral outbreak. Now 7-year-old Zoe lives in constant fear of what she calls breathers, strange tentacled creatures with glowing red eyes whose rasping breaths can occasionally be heard wandering the ground just above their shelter. Zoe's father, Ray, tries to lift her spirits, but her mother, Claire, doesn't make it easy. She's a warrior. After containing a small fire in the kitchen, Claire insists that they must go to the surface to bury the ash which has fallen just outside the ventilation shaft, potentially giving away their location to the breathers. This action in itself gives them away, and as the Hewitts are forced again to flee their home, Ray falls victim to the creatures. Zoe and Claire escape to a nearby forest, but soon find themselves trapped in a net like wild animals. The breathers begin closing in on their prey, and only now do we see them for what they really are. U.S. military personnel wearing gas masks and night vision goggles. They aren't mutants at all. In fact, it's Zoe and Claire who are infected with the virus, as we learn when Claire suddenly transforms into a hulking monster, quickly eviscerating the soldiers. Safe for the time being, Claire reverts back to her normal human self, and once again, mother and daughter are forced to seek shelter underground. This time, they stumble upon a sewer hatch giving way to an entire underground civilization of mutants, which has sprung up since the outbreak. They're not alone anymore.
Cool. Got it.
Yeah.
Um,
So, what do you think?
I thought it was fine. I thought it was pretty good. It was compelling for large stretches.
Okay.
Um,
I feel like it did a lot of very sharp, kind of cool, trendy writing tricks that make it make it really pop. You know, like a lot of horror movies do this where they will cut on a very loud noise, which is almost a jump scare, but it's really just to like kind of keep you on edge, and it's really just like something mundane happening. Like in this case, it was constantly doing a thing where, okay, they have like their bomb shelter underground where they live, and it's separated by all these like hanging sheets that they use as doors, basically.
yeah.
And it'll always be like whoosh. Right on the beginning of a new scene, it'll say like whoosh, and they like tear aside the curtain to go into the room. And it's like, I guess supposed to be surprising. Like when they make the movie, it's supposed to make you jump,
Yeah.
which I found kind of obnoxious, actually.
It's just like building suspense with like a bunch of fake payoffs
Yeah,
of that suspense.
and that just feels like something that I think people would like, though. Like the kind of people that are reading these scripts and deciding whether to make them are going to think like, oh, that's smart. Oh, that's so clever.
But it's also kind of cliche at this point.
Yeah, no, I don't like it. I think
Yeah.
it's annoying.
Um,
But another, I think, similar trick that a lot of people, and I think we've seen this in a lot of these, especially in the horror movies and some of the like kind of thrillery scripts we've read, there are a lot of things to do with like counting down, or like things that are broken into steps. It just like gives it a sense of immediacy. Like they do a thing in this a lot where it's the breathers that are like walking overhead and you can hear their footsteps getting closer and closer, or like they're counting the rungs of the ladder up to the hatch to the surface, and all these things that they can like count down and make it like more tense and build suspense, I guess, is the point.
yeah.
But it also feels a little cheap to me. It feels like a cheap trick. There's a lot of that going on here.
Sure.
There's the thing I didn't mention about the girl, Zoe. She has like a doll named Olive,
Right.
which is like, I guess they found it when they arrived at the shelter, and it's like a really old, creepy looking doll with one of those pull strings it'll talk. And so it's like her only real like friend, well, imaginary friend. But there's a part that I thought was unintentionally really funny, where they're trying to be really quiet because the breathers are right overhead, and she accidentally pulls the string on the doll, and
Yeah.
it starts talking, and then her mom just like mercilessly beats it against the wall to make it shut up, which that alone is going to be just as loud. I feel like slamming this doll against the wall.
No, the doll's like shrieking though. The doll
I
talks
guess.
loudly.
Yeah, they put the doll's words in all caps,
Yeah.
so I assume it's pretty loud.
It is there are a lot of things like that though, where something happens like at just the right moment,
Yeah,
to like necessitate that they react.
that was kind of annoying too. Like so they do a bunch of flashbacks to when they are forced to evacuate their town, and then they find the shelter, and of course, right when they find the shelter, they're about to drop the bomb, and like as soon as they shut the hatch is when the bomb hits. And stuff like that really
How do you
bothers me.
feel about how they withheld the reveal? Like, how do you feel about the twist where we learn that the breathers aren't actually the mutant zombies? They're actually just the U.S. military,
Yeah.
and the protagonists that we've been with the entire time are
I thought it was
the mutants.
a little bit dumb,
Yeah.
to be honest, and like it was too obvious, I think. And it's not obvious in the way that like I knew it was going to do that, but like if I had to guess, if I knew that this was going to have a twist, that would have to be what the twist is.
Right.
I feel like at this point maybe people are too savvy nowadays or something, but if you're going to do a twist, it has to be a little bit more out of left field than that. It was too obvious. And then
It's the sort of thing. I listened to some like Q&A with Matt Weiner a long time ago.
Matt Weiner.
The creator of Mad Men.
Oh, okay, yeah.
and he was talking about like writing on The Sopranos and how they would always write like 3 different things for any one scenario,
Okay.
like 3 possible outcomes, and they would discard all 3 of those, and they would make sure to go to the 4th one because the first 3 would be too expected.
Nice. See, this
So
seems like number 1.
This feels like the first one.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
what twist could we have? Let's switch the zombies.
Right.
Um,
Which also, it bothered me because this to me just, it felt like, okay, well, let me just explain first. So they explain the whole twist. You learn that the breathers are actually humans and that the Hewitts are like infected with whatever this virus is. Their blood is like black and all squirming with the iscrus. But anyway, so as soon as we learn that, 2 things immediately, and like this was just my reaction, but my first thought is, okay, if the Hewitts are really the ones that are infected, who cares about the infection? Because there's no discernible effect that it has on people. And this is before we learn about the whole transforming thing. But so that kind of deflated it for me at first, because I was like, all right, well, whatever this virus is, it clearly isn't deadly. So what am I supposed to be worried about? But then
you find out that that's not the case.
Yeah, but later. And my other point is that before we get to that, before the whole crazy transformation thing, they do this big long flashback, which it's showing them finding the shelter. Like the flashbacks before now had been leading up to this. It was like them evacuating their town and stuff. And so this final flashback comes right on the heels of us learning that the breathers are just humans. And then we have to spend all this time just watching them find the shelter. And it's like super boring. And it just completely takes the momentum out of it for me. I mean,
really,
I know
that's not that much time. It's only a few pages.
It felt longer to me. It was, I think, the longest of the flashbacks, and I know it was like leading to the reveal about the crazy monster transformation thing, because they show like the mom cuts her hand or her arm or something, and the blood is all black and gross, and that's how we learn. But it was like, it seemed really tone deaf on the part of the writers to me to like drop this huge twist with the breathers not actually being monsters. And then I feel like you have to immediately jump to the transformation thing after that. Like any time spent in between is going to be wasted, and it's annoying because you're slow and frustrating.
Because as a viewer, as a reader, you're not thinking about the past then. You're thinking about what you just learned, and that's what's satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, let me tell you the most exciting, crazy thing about this story, and then now let's jump back in time and like before all that. And I was like, no, I don't want that. Stay in that moment.
I do think it was more brief than you remember.
I think it felt so long because it was on the heels of that reveal, and I really wanted to get to that. Anyway. I thought there was some really cringeworthy dialogue in here. Like, there's this whole thing about how they keep track of the days on the wall, kind of like prisoners with little hash marks.
Sure.
And they're trying to, like, lift Zoe's spirits because nervous and
like
scared.
An 8-year-old that's been underground for 301 straight days.
So they're trying to stay positive, and the dad, I think it is saying something like, no, each one of these days is a miracle that we're even alive. And then at the very end, it's like the final line in the script, Zoe is telling her mom, or asking her mom, like, is it morning outside? Because they're like underground in the sewers at this point, and her mom's like, yeah, it must be by now. And she's like, we made it another day. You know, we've made it like 300 some odd days now. And her mom is like, not days, Zoe, miracles. And it's like, ugh.
Well, that's not so bad, though.
Come on, my eyes couldn't roll back far enough.
That's what the father said in the beginning, and the father just died. And he was always like the optimistic one.
Can we talk about the dad for a second, though? Because he died like 3 times, basically.
When?
Okay. So he first dies, or so you think, when they're first escaping the shelter because they've accidentally given themselves away.
You only think that because you don't know that he's the zombie and he's about to transform.
I know, but they made it sound very graphic and bloody. And
it was.
Turns out it was him attacking the soldiers, which is like,
well,
fine,
the soldiers are attacking him too, but
right. But so that's the first time you think he dies.
Yeah.
Then he like suddenly appears again to save them from the soul. I didn't even put this in the synopsis, but when they're fighting the soldier dudes in the forest, he suddenly appears one last time to save them.
That's fine.
Just in the nick of time, of course. And then you think he dies again, and then when they're finally fleeing to the sewers, they see him on their way one last time, and he has like one last word.
No,
and,
they're with him. They don't separate.
Well, I mean, I thought he died again right after he saved them, and then there are like
No.
several more pages of fighting with the soldiers, and then they see him again, and then he dies. I thought it was just like way too drawn out.
But he doesn't. Well, first, he's not even hurt the first time.
Right.
And then the second time, he gets shot a bunch, and he untransforms. And, like, the virus recedes out into him or whatever. And he's just on the ground bleeding out. And then they see him for, like, their last goodbye.
No.
And then he's dead.
That was too much for me.
Yeah. I thought the whole thing with the rules, it's maybe a touch obvious, but I thought that was pretty effective.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Go ahead.
When they're in the bunker underground, the bomb shelter, the mother Claire is always stressing to Zoe, like, we have to follow these 4 rules. Like, what were they?
One was like, just don't lose control of
Don't lose
your emotions.
Yeah, be calm, be quiet, be in control.
Yeah. I forget what they all were, but that was the gist of it.
All perfectly reasonable things to be when you're hiding underground in a confined space. Things to, like, keep you centered and composed.
Yeah.
But we find out later that's what they have to do in order to stave off the virus from taking hold of them.
Right.
So it was kind of a good reveal.
Yeah, because at first it felt like one of those cliche things. I feel like that's another trick a lot of movies use. I've seen, like, didn't Zombieland sort of do that? They have, like,
I don't remember.
I think Jesse Eisenberg's character had, like, several rules for survival.
Yeah.
One of them was the double tap.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I felt like it was sort of hearkening to that, and it's done, I think, a lot, but this was a fresh take on it. I was surprised, so...
Well, and it's effective, too, because you kind of see them in a new context by the end of the movie.
That's why it works.
That's why it works. It is kind of an overdone thing. Though probably a relatively realistic thing for being in a post-apocalyptic world. You want to have, in a world without any rules or semblance of normalcy.
But more so when...
You want to, like, ground yourself by having things to follow.
Yeah, but more so I think when there's a kid around.
True.
I think that makes more sense.
The U.S. Military characters that we see are all just, like, paper thin.
And wildly incompetent.
And wildly incompetent, yeah.
Like, when... This was before we knew that they were humans. I thought they were just some kind of monster things, and so it made sense that they might be just really stupid. But when they break into the shelter, Zoe and her mom, like, escape through the ventilation hatch, and they try and, like, stave off the mutant dudes. They, like, push a bookshelf in front of the doorway so they can't get through, and they set it on fire.
Yeah.
But then, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't help think, like, wouldn't they know to just go back up to the surface? Like, they could see, I think, that they were escaping through the hatch, or they could see that there wasn't anyone in the shelter anymore. So, like...
Well, one of them was still in the shelter.
I guess, but, like, knowing now that they were actually humans, I feel like...
Right.
Why would you just keep standing in front of a flaming bookshelf? Why not at least, like, check up above again?
Why not leave a couple people up above?
Yeah.
Too.
Which, okay, likewise... When they were, when Zoe's parents were going up to the surface to, like, disguise the ash that had fallen, which, whatever, that seemed like a bit of a stretch as well to me.
I don't know why.
Because
the kerosene lamp that catches fire in the bunker, it chars the...
There's a lot of smoke coming out through the ventilation hatch, and the mom suddenly realizes, like, oh, this is gonna... leave ash on the ground. I don't know if I would think of that. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know, but the mom consistently is very, like, cautious, like, to a fault in some degrees. But also, she's a very quick and clever thinker.
I didn't like her. I don't know if I agree with that.
She had some good ideas. She's the one that thought of the bomb shelter at the church. You remember that? Yeah. She thought of taking the bunk bed ladder and jamming it into the door to kind of keep the people at bay a little bit longer.
What I was going to say was, you're not going to derail me on my train of hating this character.
Sure.
Why did they both go up above to the surface when they were trying to disguise the ash and, like, bury the ash? Why did both parents need to go up? That seemed super dumb to me. Like,
One should have stayed with the kid.
They leave Zoe there, and they're just like, if we're not back in 5 minutes, just lock it. And that's, like, traumatizing. I don't know why they both needed to go up there for that.
Yeah.
I had sort of a larger point I wanted to make, not just about this script.
Sure.
Because I'm not trying to fault this script too much for it, but, you know, it's one of those stories where it's largely just about survival.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, they find things to do, like there was a rat that was eating their food, and so there was a little bit of an episode where they were trying to kill the rat, and they have these little short-term goals and conflicts that kind of string it together. But I think it's hard sometimes, and you can't really just hang a movie on people trying to survive. Even in, like, Castaway or something, like, at least he has a goal to, like, get off the island or something. Like, you always want to have some kind of overarching question for Act 2, usually, that is, like, the main tension, the conflict. And I don't think it can really just be, can they survive? Because that's not something you can ever conclusively
Ultimately,
answer.
that is the question for every movie.
I mean, yeah, but that's the problem, is, like, you can never conclusively answer, yes, they managed to survive. Because, yeah, they managed to survive for that moment, but at any other moment, they could still die. You know, like...
Sure.
You need a question. That overarching question needs to be something that you can answer concretely and with finality. And you can never say, yes, they survived, period. That's because everyone ultimately, yes, is going to die. And so that doesn't really count as a question. So I think that's why you have to, especially with movies like this, kind of break it down into smaller, more concrete goals and steps.
Yeah.
Which this did that for the most part, you know. Like, in the very beginning of Act 2, it was just kind of establishing their life, and, like, they had smaller dramas and stuff.
Well, and the smaller dramas forwarded the plot, too.
The rat was
the presence of the rat.
That was how they figured out that there was a way in. I think they were trying to say he came in through the vent, right?
He came in through the vent, yeah. And it also added urgency because the rat had eaten a lot of the food.
Right.
So it made their situation more dire. But then also in killing the rat, that's what sets the fire, and that's what gets them caught. And that's what forces them ultimately above ground.
Yeah, so that was all pretty well.
Yeah. And I like
connected.
that they got out of the bunker by like the page 66, I think. They were out of the bunker.
Yeah.
And moving forward. And I thought that was interesting because at least having read 10 Cloverfield Lane or The Cellar or whatever.
Yeah.
Was in the bunker the entire time.
Yeah, until the very, very end.
Yeah. I liked that they got it moving a little bit and they gave us a sense of the world outside. But ultimately, the world outside or how they portrayed that was underwhelming.
Yeah.
The twist.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, when they're fighting the military dudes at the end.
Yeah.
Zoe, like, kind of saves her mom at the last minute from this one guy who's about to shoot her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then he runs out of bullets, which is dumb and, like, way too convenient, But
then it also sets up, like, the worst dialogue in the script.
Oh, do you think?
The lieutenant saying, "You just killed 5 U.S. soldiers. You're just what we say you are, a monster."
I didn't think that was the worst.
That's really on the nose. And also, dude's just oblivious, like... They killed 5 U.S. soldiers because you shot a net at them, and then we're about to shoot, and then started shooting at them. Yeah. That's why they killed you.
I think there are debatably some worse lines.
Well, what was one you were going to mention?
Well, so when that they're setting up that miracle thing about the days being miracles, it's like page 16 or 17.
Mm-hmm. You really hate that.
I do. The mom is like, "I don't believe in miracles. Not anymore." And then the dad says something about, "This is our life now. We have to live it the best we can, or else what's the point?" It's like all of these lines sound so stage play kind of dramatic, like, or it sounds like a soap opera or something.
Well, and it's a little weird that they're having this conversation 300 days in to their confinement.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's something that you would talk about at some point, don't you think?
I guess, but okay, here's another one. The mom is saying, "I'm trying something new today." And then they ask her, "What?" "Relaxing." It's like, oh, please. Nobody actually talks like that. And then, okay, there's a flashback where we're establishing the whole virus outbreak thing. And their neighbor is the one who tells them about it. And the neighbor's wife, is just saying, "They have a name for it now, you know." And it's like, okay, now I'm supposed to ask a name for what? And then they tell you about the virus. It's like so leading.
Yeah.
And so, just...
It's very expositional.
Yeah. Anyway, that wasn't my point. I was trying to say, I wanted to ask you about that part at the end where they're fighting the soldiers. Zoe's about to, like, finish off one of these soldiers, and her mom is like, no, don't, just leave him. He's one of us now.
Mm-hmm.
What? He's infected now? Like, how did they get infected? I don't get it. Because, like, presumably, Zoe and her family, they were infected just from nothing. They were just like...
It's through the air.
Was it because his mask came off or
it's
something?
It's because he's bleeding on the air, I think. Because his mask came off, yeah.
I don't know. I didn't get that. Did he take... I feel like he took his mask off, so he just like... Whoops, that was his own fault.
Yeah, but he might have been dying.
Whatever.
I don't know. Those characters are so underdrawn that it doesn't really matter.
Another one more annoying thing it did, and I'll stop being mean. Mm-hmm. But it repeated things in the description lines a lot, where it would be like, they're still okay. Still okay. Or like the dad is like wrestling with the hatch of the shelter, and it says that the breathers are like pushing back against him, and they're too strong, and it'll be in like italics the second time. Yeah. They did that like multiple times.
But it's emphasizing just the...
That was that overwrought like theatrical feeling, like, again, to me.
But just like how, what's the word? Precarious our situation is, and how it could be changing in each and every moment.
No.
I don't know. I thought it doesn't detract from me.
It did to me. It was cheesy.
Okay.
Should we wrap this up and do our social media stuff and then the verdicts?
Sure. Facebook.com/OSPodcast. We're on iTunes, the Off-Screen Podcast. Our website is OSPodcast.com. Our email is info@OSPodcast.com. I already said iTunes, but iTunes reviews and emails, those are great.
It sounds like you're falling asleep.
I'm just thinking about it. We're on Stitcher and YouTube and Twitter. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's everything.
Yeah.
Okay, verdicts?
Yeah.
You said you thought it was okay.
Yeah. I think I'm still going to pass on both.
Yeah.
It was just a little too generic.
Okay.
It's not... I didn't think it was terrible. I think I liked it much more than you did.
Yeah, it seems that way.
But there's just... It's not enough there to consider it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard pass for me.
Yeah.
I was just groaning and like rolling my eyes about so much of this. The dialogue, the twist was way too obvious, too easy.
It wasn't... I don't know. I didn't find it obvious. Just that if there was going to be a twist, it was obvious.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I didn't necessarily predict it, but if I had to guess what a twist would be, if this was the premise...
If someone told you there was a twist...
Yeah, then that
you
is
would be
what
like,
I would immediately go to.
Okay, that's the twist.
And I think I also just have sort of a sore spot for like children in movies that they're always either... I think I've said this before on one of the episodes. They're either too dumb, or they're like so precocious and clever, and nobody just writes a kid that's like a normal kid.
Wait, so what's wrong with Zoe here? I feel like she's neither of those things.
She's awfully whiny and annoying. I don't know.
She's whiny and annoying. That's what kids are.
But maybe this comes down to me just not liking kids. I don't know. But
possibly.
I don't know. Would a 7 or 8-year-old still be like playing with an imaginary friend?
Playing with
a doll?
It's not an imaginary friend. It's a doll.
Well, but she makes it talk and stuff.
Yeah, she's 7. She's in like...
I feel like that's a little old for that. I mean, maybe
she's
she
7?
a little bit... Yeah, she's definitely... I think she's at least 7. But maybe she's a little developmentally stunted because she's been living in a cellar or whatever.
It's a little traumatizing for a 7-year-old.
I could give her a little bit of leeway for that, but I also just felt like there were times where they felt like it was okay to just suddenly switch her emotions, like turn them on a dime. Because she's a kid, and that's kids do that, and that's fine. Where, like, her mom was teaching her a math lesson, and she's all excited at first because she got the answer right. And then suddenly she just sees the, like, 3 little corn kernels they're using to count and thinks of the 3 of them, and then suddenly she's, like, crying, and she's upset. It's like, come on.
Does that happen like that?
Are kids that frail? I don't know. Are their emotions so fickle? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Felt cloying.
I don't know. All children are cloying.
She just annoyed me. That's
Yeah,
all.
I feel like she was fine. She was a decent kid character. But yeah, so hard pass from you.
Yeah.
Passes from me.
I'm gonna still watch Stranger Things. Still giving it
You don't have to.
benefit of the doubt.
It's good. I feel like the ending is a little underwhelming.
Is it just a one season thing, or is it gonna keep going?
There's going to be another season.
Okay, so next week we're reading a script called Fully Wrecked by Jake Morris and Scott Woolman. An R-rated talking car from the 80s is brought back into service and teamed up with the son of his former partner,